At exactly 2:17 a.m., something changed in European air power. No press conference, no emergency NATO meeting, no breaking news ticker, yet within defense circles, phones started buzzing, briefings were rewritten, and analysts quietly asked the same question: since when did the Gripen become this capable? Because the aircraft Sweden had been flying for years, suddenly wasn't the same aircraft anymore. Its range had shifted, its reliability metrics jumped, its mission endurance quietly rewrote planning tables. And at the center of it all, not a missile, not a radar, not stealth coding, but a British engine company that most people stopped paying attention to, the Rolls-Royce. This is the story of how Rolls-Royce quietly rewired the Gripen fighter jet, and caught NATO off guard overnight. But here's the part that will surprise you: Rolls-Royce didn't just improve the Gripen, they changed how NATO thinks about engines. When people talk about fighter jets, they talk about stealth, radars, and missiles. But militaries know the truth: a fighter jet without a reliable engine is just a very expensive glider. Engines determine how long a jet can stay airborne, how far can it deploy, how often does it break, how fast does it respond, and whether it survives combat damage. During the Cold War, engine failures killed more pilots than enemy fire, and that's why NATO historically relied on two giants: General Electric Aviation and Pratt & Whitney. Then what about Rolls-Royce? For decades, it was seen as civil aviation, luxury branding, legacy engineering, not frontline fighter dominance. That perception would turn out to be a catastrophic miscalculation, because while NATO was busy arguing about stealth and fifth-generation jets, Rolls-Royce was quietly perfecting something else: dependability under chaos. This is modern air power, where air power meets reality. Subscribe to Jet Vortex for more documentaries behind the fighter jets. The Saab Gripen was always different, not built for aircraft carriers, not built for massive budgets, not built for global power projection. It was built for survival, designed to operate from highways, be serviced by a small crew, launch again in minutes, fight while outnumbered. But the early Gripen had a limitation: its engine, licensed versions of American designs, worked well, but didn't fully match Sweden's doctrine. Sweden didn't need raw thrust, they needed rapid turnaround, extreme reliability, cold weather tolerance, low maintenance hours, predictable performance under stress. That's when Rolls-Royce entered the picture quietly, and what they did next wasn't an upgrade. It was a philosophy change. American engine design traditionally focused on maximum thrust, peak performance, high-end combat bursts. Rolls-Royce took a different approach. They asked, what if the engine never became the problem? Instead of pushing engines to the edge, they engineered them to live below stress thresholds. This meant fewer failures, longer service life, less maintenance downtime, predictable power curves. For NATO planners obsessed with sortie rates, this was revolutionary, because an aircraft that flies 90% of the time beats a stronger aircraft grounded for maintenance. And that's when NATO realized something unsettling: the Gripen was suddenly always available. Rolls-Royce didn't announce anything flashy, no marketing push, no bold claims. Instead, data started leaking out through exercise reports, maintenance logs, mission readiness statistics. Gripen units were flying more hours, needing fewer spare parts, recovering faster after intense missions, and the engine, it just kept running, even after bird strikes, rough landings, cold weather starts at -30 degrees Celsius, rapid scramble cycles. This wasn't luck. This was engine architecture discipline. But the real shock came when NATO ran simulations, and the Gripen started outperforming jets that were supposed to be superior. In NATO war games, planners noticed something uncomfortable. When bases were damaged, fuel was limited, maintenance crews were stretched, the Gripen didn't drop out of the fight, other jets did. Because Rolls-Royce's engine philosophy assumed infrastructure would fail, support would be limited, war would be messy, exactly the scenario NATO feared most. Suddenly, a small Nordic jet was rewriting alliance planning assumptions. Here's the uncomfortable truth: NATO's air doctrine assumes perfect logistics, Rolls-Royce designed for the opposite. That meant, Gripens could disperse faster, operate from damaged airfields, maintain pressure longer, and survive first strike scenarios. In modern warfare, availability is power, and Rolls-Royce quietly handed that power to Sweden, and then other countries started noticing, when nations like Finland, Brazil, Canada, behind closed doors, started studying the Gripen more closely. They weren't looking at the radar, they were looking at cost per flight hour, engine maintenance cycles, long-term sustainability. Rolls-Royce had turned the engine into a strategic asset, not a performance gimmick, and that's when the realization hit NATO headquarters. This wasn't about Sweden anymore. Rolls-Royce proved something dangerous. You don't need the biggest engine, the loudest jet, or the highest thrust to dominate modern air combat. You need reliability, sustainability, and readiness under pressure. The Gripen became a thinking man's fighter, and Rolls-Royce made it possible. During multinational exercises, something odd emerged. Gripens flew more sorties per day, not because they were faster, but because they were available. When runways were intentionally damaged during drills, Gripens returned sooner. When maintenance windows shrank, Gripens stayed operational. This wasn't doctrine, this was engine math. And NATO didn't like what it implied, because if this trend continued, some NATO assumptions were wrong. In long-duration NATO simulations, Gripens refused to disappear. Jets that were faster, stealthier, and more expensive dropped out. Maintenance attrition, logistics fatigue, crew exhaustion, but Gripens remained quietly. This wasn't supposed to happen, because NATO planning models are built around American assumptions, assumptions Rolls-Royce challenged. The Gripen wasn't meant to replace top-tier jets. It was meant to outlast them. In modern warfare, endurance is dominance. Consistently, uncomfortably, and others started paying attention. Engines decide, deployment speed, sustained pressure, strategic endurance. Rolls-Royce made the engine invisible again, and that invisibility was power. The most dangerous weapon is the one you don't notice changing. When NATO planners model future conflicts, they don't just ask, which jet is fastest? They ask, which jet will still be flying on day 30? And somewhere in those simulations, the Gripen keeps appearing, quiet, reliable, unassuming, powered by an engine philosophy that NATO didn't see coming. Rolls-Royce didn't dominate the sky, they dominated the margins. And in modern warfare, that's where wars are won. Future conflicts won't reward perfection, they will reward survival. Jets that can be fixed anywhere, launched anytime, flown endlessly. The Gripen fits that future, because Rolls-Royce designed for war as it really is. Today, when planners ask, which jet dominates the sky, they add a quieter question, which jet will still be flying when everything else breaks? And the answer keeps pointing north, to Sweden, to the Gripen, and to an engine philosophy that didn't chase glory, only survival.
If Canada builds Gripens domestically not just for itself, but for NATO partners, we are not talking about a $2 or $3 billion deal. We are talking about manufacturing plants, supply chains, engine work, avionics, maintenance hubs, upgrades, training systems, over 20 to 30 years? That's $20 billion or more. And every dollar not going to Lockheed Martin is a dollar Washington notices. Here's the twist most people miss. Europe already uses Gripen. So why Canada? Because Canada offers something Europe can't: proximity to the US market, access to North American suppliers, NATO credibility without EU politics, a trusted industrial base, and insulation from European internal rivalries. A Canadian-built Gripen isn't anti-American, it's post-American. And that distinction matters. The F-35's biggest fear is maintenance, software updates, weapons integration, data access. But Gripen breaks that model. And if Canada proves you can build fighters domestically, customize systems, maintain sovereignty, still stay NATO compliant, then suddenly, other countries start asking dangerous questions. Picture this. Canada builds Gripens. Then a NATO country says, why can't we get ours assembled there too? Then another. Suddenly, Lockheed Martin isn't the default choice anymore.